let me quickly introduce Fred. And there's a reason why I do it in this following way, because I'm going to get to the first question. You're actually very well traveled across various aspects of an academic, business, consultant, and coaching life. You have a PhD in Berkeley in economics, and then actually you ended up at the first job teaching accounting at the MIT. I found that interesting because myself, I have a master in economics, and my first job was in accounting at HP. So there's something wrong with economics that we end up in accounting at our first job. But actually, our ways departed very much after that. I know that you met your, I think you call him kind of a sponsor, whatever, certainly an inspirational figure, Peter Senge, at the MIT. And then you went on quite soon to found the Conscious Business Center. You then went on to found a consultancy, Axialent, which keeps striving. One of their partners, Jose, we have here. And then you joined two businesses, once as an executive for development at LinkedIn, or I think it's executive development, and you had LinkedIn, and then later for vice president at Google, consulting, I guess, Serge and the CEO office. And then you went back to academia, working at Technological de Monterrey, doing certain events and projects and teachings. And then if I look at your fredkofman.org website, currently you speak, at least the website speaks a lot about educating, enabling, coaching leaders in various facets. What is interesting about that is that you've cut through a lot of aspects of enabling, not only studying, of course not, teaching, consulting, coaching, conscious businesses, conscious leaders. And I'm kind of wondering, are you an uber creative, explorative nature, or do you suffer from some kind of restlessness and you haven't found your place yet? Because you've done so many things across so many aspects. How does it feel having done so many things? Does it feel good or bad in terms of having found your place?
Yeah, I think I've always been in my place. It's just that my place has been shifting.
Okay.
So I don't have a, it's interesting. It's like I'm at home everywhere and nowhere. I've always also lived in a lot of different places in the world. I lived in Germany, I lived in Spain, I lived in Argentina, I live in Mexico, I live in the US. For a while, I thought I was going to live in Dubai. And almost everywhere I've been to, I had this feeling, oh, I could live here. Maybe, maybe not. But yeah, so it's a strange mixture of always being in the place and never being in the place. There's no final destination.
Okay.
But at every moment, this is the place. You didn't say what I consider my original job. I was a youth leader, a group leader in the Jewish community. We call that a madrich, when I was 14 years old. And even before that, I liked organizing games for children. I was 12 and I organized games for the 6-year-olds and 7-year-olds. And I liked, it's like the Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts, just organizing things and being a group leader. So Reid Hoffman asked me the other day what was my first job, put it in LinkedIn, and I said, I'm still doing my first job. I've always been kind of a youth group leader. I'm still doing it. And now I help other people become coaches, and I coach people, but I'm still working with people, helping them flourish. So all my jobs, I mean, every position that I've taken, everything I do has around that. So I'd say, yes, there are multiple expressions of the same idea. And I've been orbiting that idea since I was born. I mean, I guess it's my nature. It's been that, to learn and to share what I learn. I don't think I'm particularly creative. I don't consider myself such a creative mind. I think I'm a synthesizer. I feel I'm blessed to know a lot of very intelligent and creative people, and I think I can translate what they say in different domains and make it more accessible to other people. But I don't consider myself like this big creator. Everything I teach, I've learned. There's very little that I can say it's mine. Maybe I have one original idea in my life, and yeah, I'm proud of that idea. But it's putting things together. As you know, King Solomon said, "There's nothing new under the sun." I think we're all creating with what other giants before us have seen. Now we stand on their shoulders, like Newton said. And yeah, I feel very good about that, about being a
Excellent.
translator and a person that will help others access material that can enrich their lives.
There's a reason why we call this series A Dialogue with Conscious Thought Leaders, and why many people, me among them, consider you a thought leader, because very early on, I don't know, maybe 2000, when did you write the book on conscious business? I think 2000,
2001, something like that.
2001.
Yeah.
And you helped coin the term in many ways. Okay, so fair. Did you actually expect that conscious business, the way you kind of thought through it back then, put it in various books, and since a lot of talks, etc., would evolve into what you see now? Does it feel good? Does it give you some doubts? Maybe you feel like, uh-oh, I don't think I gave the right impulse back then. How does it feel being a early
I mean,
adopter and
it
propagator?
feels funny. I had to fight with the people from Sounds True. They thought the title was really bad.
Okay.
They thought it was a bad title. It was woo woo, and people would be like, "What the hell is that?" I liked the. I thought it was witty because conscious business is like a business that is done consciously, but also like a business, like an affair, like an issue, like a conscious issue. Like here's a this is my business, or this is my business and I want to do it consciously. It doesn't refer just to the business world. And they said, yeah, that maybe it's witty for you, but nobody's going to get it. I'm glad, after all this time, I think a lot of
Mm.
people got it. And I mean, it's a name, but again, I mean, I named the book like that, but I think conscious business is much bigger as a movement there, and there's conscious capitalism. And in fact, I feel more capitalist than the conscious capitalist, and they are more
Okay.
business than I am business. So yeah, I don't, as I said before, I don't feel any sense of ownership. I think it was a witty title. It did the job. It inspired people. But I am proud if people consider me an inspiring example. I mean, that's how I think of being a thought leader. It's not that I'm thinking and other people follow what I do. I think of leadership as eliciting internal commitment. And that's what I teach in business. A business leader is not the boss or the one that gives the orders, but a business leader is one that inspires others to make a heartfelt commitment to pursue the mission and give their best. And that, in a business sense, that makes sense. But in a pedagogical aspect, then there is no mission except flourishing and growing.
Mm.
So I'll take it with pride if you mean that. If you mean I want other people to study what I wrote and become like me, I'd be embarrassed. I mean, really, that's not the kind of
No, actually,
leader that I like. I like
certainly
a
I know most people, they look at the first definition of the flourishing and the ever-growing, and then I'll be very keen on the idea of allowing emergence, and allowing new things to emerge and to evolve. And we'll get back to that as we talk about your idea about businesses and the market overall, as a mechanic, as a machine, as a living being that actually helps emerge new ways on how to live and do things. Let me quickly double click on the definition that you provide on business. It sounds very fundamental, but I think there's a bit of a purpose here, because what you wrote in your book is that you define business as a voluntary transaction between people that adds value to both. I hope I got that
yes,
right, just as a copy.
yeah.
And I'm not questioning it at all. I just want to probe and have your opinion on two aspects of, are we living really in an area where a lot of what we do, there's actually a lot of entrepreneurs, conscious entrepreneurs, business people, CEOs, as the audience today, which consider themselves, they do business. So let's
Mm-hmm.
double click if they really do business, because you're saying a transaction is voluntary, and voluntary obviously assumes that there's actually partners that in some way have a sense of freedom, a sense of I'm not being forced into it. While in the economic world, even if I take the state-owned businesses, monopolies, for example, the question is the transaction really voluntary? Or in many cases, people may be so poor, they don't have a choice. Again, I'm not trying to be theoretical. I'm saying, does that imply that any kind of transaction, and there's many examples, I think, that is not really voluntary, isn't really business? And the second thing about adding value, which I want to double click and have your opinion, is we obviously assume that we have enough consciousness to understand what is really adding value to us, what does us good. And I'm not trying to outsmart their people than their choices. But obviously, if you think about the debate on social media and the way how they seduce and entice us to use more, you could ask of how aware I am of the choices that I'm making. Or you could question whether the food and beverage industry, I'm thinking now about just using the American continent, which pushes obesity up to levels unheard of, how aware are people about their choices? And again, I'm trying to get to the same question. Is maybe a lot of what we do today, in your definition, not a business transaction in the way you think it should be?
Yes. Wow, it's very deep. Your question is very profound, and I'm thinking how to address it in its full
That's very
magnitude.
good, Fred, because I made a bet with somebody that it will make you think.
Yeah, I mean, nobody has asked me that, and I love the question. So let me explain. With your permission, I'll start circuitously, or circumambulate. I mean, I'll get to the question in a spiral, but I'll start with a distinction between liberty and freedom. Freedom, we use them indistinctly, they're like synonyms in English, but there's a technical definition. That freedom is the ability to do what you want. And nobody's free. I mean, you can't do what you want. Like I would like to go back in time. Okay, I can't do it. I'm not free to go back in time. I'm not free to be in Argentina now. I'm not. I mean, I'm here. Maybe I don't have enough money. I'd like to go to Mars before I die. I may not be free to do that. It may not be feasible. So, from a position of freedom, you can evaluate what is your domain of possible actions, and that is conditioned by resources, by a whole lot of things. It's a practical question. I do not mean that definition of freedom when I speak in the book. I display, for me, voluntary has to do with property rights. So, for example, starving to death is not voluntary. That's not voluntary, but it's not coerced. So the opposite of voluntary is not undesirable. It's not desire versus lack of desire. Liberty is in absence of the invasion of your life, your liberty, and your property by another conscious agent through violent means. I'll say it again. I'm talking about violent intrusion into your domain of action, possible action, restricted action by nature. So nature makes you unfree, but nature cannot deny liberty to you. The denial of liberty or the impingement of liberty, it's a human action. Now, a lion attacking you is not infringing on your rights or on your liberty. A lion attacking you can kill you, but I wouldn't say it's a liberty destructive act of aggression. Another human being coming and getting into your house and stealing from you or vandalizing your house or killing you, that is infringing on your, let's say, your property right, on yourself and on your resources. So when I mean by voluntary, I don't mean that everybody's really happy. Like if I'm starving to death and you offer me to work for food, maybe I don't like the job, but I like the job with food better than I like not to do the job and starve. Now, why am I starving? If I'm starving because there's no food around and it's an act of nature, then I mean, I guess that's the way life is. If I'm starving because somebody is enslaving me and they say, if you don't work, I won't give you food, that's a crime. That's slavery. But so there's the issue of property rights has to do with human interaction, not with the interaction with nature. Nature cannot restrict your liberty. So I am guilty of the confusion or the conflation between these two notions
Okay.
in the definition you read. So if I can say it again, I would say a voluntary transaction takes place without aggression. So both people prefer to trade than not to trade, and they're not subject to threats
Okay.
that infringe on their property rights. So for example, I mean, let me take the other. A thief puts a gun in front of you and say, what do you prefer? I shoot you or you give me your money? It's like, okay, I give you the money. Of course, I would do that. And then they say, okay, this was a voluntary transaction because you chose to give me the money. Yes, it's true. I chose to give the money under threat. The threat
Sure.
is the violation. So in business, there is, for me, a legitimate business. It's a business where there's no coercive threat for the transaction. But that doesn't mean that you have the freedom to say, well, I don't really like this. And then, it's your fault. You have to give me food even if I don't work. Um, now, why is this important? Let's take the state, let's leave it on the side because the state is based on coercion. I mean, the government is the use of force to make people behave in ways they don't want to do it by infringing on their unfettered property rights. There can be an argument, you can be a minarchist, like a small government. You can be an anarchist, no government. You can be a more socialist with a government that takes care of the people. But nobody disagrees that the state it's a very delicate entity to assess. And we will have to go into utilitarianism. And is it worth it? Not. Do we get more? But allow me to put that aside because that's going to get political very quickly. In the domain of business, let's take the extreme example that you mentioned. Is okay. The consumption. Let's say drugs. I mean, a drug that is clearly, well, I would say clearly bad. Obviously, the people that consume drugs don't think they're bad because if they thought they're bad, they wouldn't consume them. So the question is, how do you organize society in the best possible way? Now, I have a big value for the non-infringement of people's right to choose what to do with their lives, even if they make mistakes, even if they're confused about what's going to be good in the long term, they have the right to make the mistake and learn from it, even if they kill themselves. I mean, I like spearfishing. Is it dangerous? Yes. I've had a couple of close calls with sharks or with eels in caves and things. I mean, it's a dangerous thing. Now you could say, well, Fred, you shouldn't be allowed to do that. I mean, the people that encourage you to do that or they sell you a spear gun, I mean, you think it's good for you, but it's not. I was like, well, who the hell are you to tell me what to? I mean, I'm willing, the probability of losing my life is less important to me than the intensity, the adventure, the excitement I get by practicing. And you say, no, it's not worth it. It's like, well, who the hell are you? Well, I know better than you. It's like, well, I don't know. I think I know better than you. Who's going to make the decision? I hope you'll say, no, you, Fred, if you want to climb mountains or spearfish or go on a glider or do whatever the hell people do so many stupid things. But who is the nanny state? You, a group of conscious leaders? I mean, I don't want to tell anybody what to do. I believe people have the right to make mistakes with their property. You can't force me to pay for your mistakes, but you can do whatever you want. So for me, business is people meeting. This is a voluntary transaction. You invited me. I said yes. We're having a conversation. There's no threats. I hope we're both deriving pleasure and satisfaction. I am very happy to do it. Someone can say, Fred, it's a waste of time. It's like, no, it's not a waste of my time. It's a good use of time. So what I value from the business is the liberty, now with this distinction, is the ability of each person to engage without coercion in an act that they think it's improving their future. They think, could they be wrong? They could be wrong.
So let's build on that. Thank you.
Please.
Let's make the jump to conscious business. So what is your definition of the conscious business?
Okay, now Adam Smith had this beautiful intuition, which it was when everybody acts in their own self-interest, the invisible hand leads society to a better state. And it said, it's not from the benevolence of the butcher or the baker or the brewer that we get our sustenance. It's in the thanks to their regard for their self-interest that they produce these things to sell to us. So let's call it unconscious capitalism or unconscious business. The only thing you care is, will people pay for this? And I can give, I don't know, high fructose corn syrup without a second thought, because I don't really give a damn about anybody else. I'm looking out for me, my self-interest, and it's totally egocentric. But this was the beautiful thing. As long as there's no infringement of property rights, there's a self-regulating mechanism that, if you abuse people and they find out you're abusing them, your business will not work out. I mean, at least you have to make people believe that their lives will be better if they consume what you sell them. And then you get advertising and all. I mean, that there are a lot of problems with that, but it's better than the alternative, a communist society or a totalitarian centralized organization, 1984 type or whatever.
And what
But that's unconscious.
Exactly.
That is unconscious. That is based on egocentric greed, which is not a value. Now, I want to even like that would be better than oppression. I prefer greedy capitalists than genocidal totalitarians. I mean, because unfortunately, that's the option. I give you it's like, in Spanish, we say Guatemala or Guatepeor. Guatemala means bad water. Guatepeor is worse water. Okay, where do you want to live? And I'd rather live in Guatemala. But what if we can have Guatebuena, like good water? And for me, conscious business is to go one step further and say, okay, what if you care about people and you want their flourishing? So as a conscious business person, I couldn't sell high fructose corn syrup to people because I think it harms them. I couldn't sell, even if they want to, and even if it's a good business, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't sell drugs. I just don't think they're good for the flourishing of people. Now, I wouldn't take a gun and go put people in jail for consuming drugs to say, well, you have the right to explore your life and do that, but I don't want to provide that. And if other people want to provide, then okay, that's the karma, the life will take care of that. But my calling is to help people flourish, and I can use my values to offer what I consider worthy, and then see if other people agree with me. And if nobody agrees with me, well, my business won't have a future. I have to choose something else. But I can't force people to consume my things because I'm a social entrepreneur. That's bullshit I have the right for other people to fund me because what I sell, nobody wants to buy. There are no social entrepreneurs. There are only entrepreneurs. Now, you can be a spiritual entrepreneur. You may be happy to offer things without a direct exchange, but through a circular exchange. Other people help you. But when people say, I'm a social entrepreneur and I deserve a subsidy from the government, you are basically stealing from other people through the government, because the government doesn't get any funds that hasn't taken from someone else by force. Other people, I mean, if not, you have donations. So it's very different to have subsidies and donations. So conscious business for me,
to help you.
Exactly, conscious business, like it could be a spiritual exchange. Like I am drawing the benefit. I'm not, this is not a business, but you are creating an opportunity where hopefully people are benefiting from our conversation, and so do I. I mean,
so if I pay attention well, the essence of what makes the business conscious is the intention of helping others flourish.
Exactly.
I think it's a good word.
Yes.
I assume you would include the planet. Some people make the distinction between people and planet, or would you say,
No, no, there
okay,
is no
interesting.
planet.
I thought it's in
There's
purpose.
no planet. I mean, the planet doesn't give a damn. If we were all dead tomorrow, or if tomorrow there's a nuclear war, the universe, I mean, flourishing is it's a conscious adjective. The unconscious things don't flourish. Animals, yes. Plants, yes, they can flourish or not. Life flourishes. The planet as a mysterious entity doesn't make any sense to me. It's not a conscious entity. But yes, the people that live in the planet, yes, the animals that live. So the Buddhists have this phrase that makes sense to me: sentient beings. So for the flourishing of all sentient beings. If you think the planet is sentient, I can imagine that you would be able to hold that ontologically or philosophically. I don't believe that. I don't believe the planet as the rock is sentient. I think
Got it.
everything
Okay.
exists
But in
in
your
consciousness.
definition, you would include what you call life, or use the term sentient being, which is the Buddhist term.
Sentient beings. I mean, I have, like, I will leave the possibility that there are disembodied sentient beings. So I'm not close to that.
Okay, fair enough.
Are there entities, souls, you can say, or other
That's fair
entities
enough.
that,
That's fair enough.
but
That's fair enough.
even for that, for the flourishing, when the Buddhists say for the flourishing of all sentient beings, they include everything that's sentient. And I like that. It's a mystery. I'm not sure either way, but
Okay.
I'm sure, like, I
Okay.
don't know, this, my remote control is not sentient. This is not a sentient thing.
Let's not dwell further on that. Let's not dwell
Okay.
further on that. Let's actually double click on what success factors. So we kind of gave an intro, what makes a business conscious, and ultimately about the intention, flourishing.
No,
People,
no, no. It's not the intention. It's the behavior consistent with that intention.
I want
I
to
mean,
get that.
I don't know. I don't know what people's intentions are. Nobody can know. Only you know what your intention is because it's an interior thing. I can see your behavior, and then I mean, you can declare your intention, but you can lie. I mean, I don't know anybody who says I'm an asshole. I mean, people always say good things about
Okay,
themselves.
that's fair. So here's my question, because you refer in actually your book still. I'm not trying to revisit your book per se,
No,
but there
no, no.
you kind of give 6 key behaviors, because you refer to it depends on how you act. 6 key behaviors, which are unconditional responsibility, essential integrity, ontological humility, authentic communication, constructive negotiation, impeccable coordination, and I think emotional mastery. So
Yes.
the interesting aspect is that for you, a conscious business, and you just clarified and corrected me, it's actually not about the intention. While many people out there that think a debate on conscious business put forefront purpose. You don't mention purpose at this point in time. We'll get back to it. I know it has some relevance for you, but here you referred only to the how. So the how for you is central to be a conscious business.
Yes. There is. You're right. I've written much more about purpose in my latest book, and perhaps it's the evolution of my thinking. When I wrote Conscious Business, in 2000, I was very focused on, like, practical things that people could do and how to develop um, I would say, the success of the company with working better, more consciously, and interacting in a way that would further people's flourishing. I think the first conversation we had, or the early part, that was the purpose is the flourishing of sentient beings. That is part of the purpose of a conscious business. But here, yes, the book is focused on these disciplines or these principles that then turn into behaviors.
Okay.
And yeah, those are helpful things. But you could use, I don't know, the mafia could use this to be a better mafia, and it would still work.
Exactly.
So these are neutral, and they could be used for a very negative purpose. They could be used to, I don't know, for a gang of thieves to perform their craft better. And yeah, it would be possible for them to use all these things and yet be devastating influence in everybody around them, and that would be despicable. So yeah, there has to be a purpose underlying it to categorize them as a conscious business. Perhaps that's
So if
a gap in the book and something I
no,
don't
that's
remember
fine.
exactly. No, 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 but
We're now what I'm trying to get to, and then maybe you can synthesize exactly the answers. What are the key success factors, you may even say, key success factors of making a business and making a business conscious? So we already have two, which you touched on. You did confirm purpose matters, what you intended.
absolutely.
And the
Yes.
second one is behavior matters. And I refer to the six that you talk about in the book.
Yes.
What other key success factors you think are really key to make a business conscious in a very practical way, given we have entrepreneurs and CEOs here on the phone?
Well, I'd say first, everything that a normal business does, you have to do. I mean, this is the Aristotelian. When I say what is a successful business, well, take everything we know from economics and business, and
Yeah.
all that material is still valid. So conscious business is not an excuse to not follow any of those other rules of the game or other indicators of are you winning the game. Imagine if I said conscious soccer. Well, first is soccer. Then we add the conscious, but it's a specific subdomain of soccer. So you can't say, oh, I play conscious soccer, so I lose all the time, but I'm still a good soccer player. I'm sorry, if you lose all the time, you're failing at soccer. So you can't say, I don't train because I have a virtuous intent. You have to do, so first, you have to do everything at
Changing that example between Argentinian and German is very telling.
yeah,
So
soccer.
how does it go beyond? How does it go beyond?
Okay, now comes this thing. How does it go beyond? Well, if you operate the business with a purpose of helping the stakeholders flourish, all of them, everybody who interacts with you, you commit to behave in ways that will help them flourish, and you as well. You also you don't have the trade-off. Say, okay, I'm going to privilege this community at the expense of all the other communities. It's a complicated, as Thomas Sowell said, there are no solutions, only trade-offs. Because, if you say, oh, we want the best for our customers. Well, if you want the best for your customers, then you should give them your product for free. So, no, but then we go broke and we can't continue. Okay, then you have to moderate the best of the customers with the best for something else. There are a lot of trade-offs that you have to assess. So in a conscious business, you would also commit to a certain, I would say, reflection, a permanent conversation about what is the best way for us to address all our communities and further their flourishing. Our suppliers too, and our employees, and our customers, and our investors, and the community in which we live. And there's no one pointed solution. There's always looking at the system as such, and thinking kindly and benevolently about the system. That's the part of conscious. If you're unconscious, you don't care. And what Adam Smith says, there's an invisible hand that will make it okay afterwards. And I believe it's better than totalitarianism, but not as good as it can be. Conscious capitalism or conscious business is, let's participate in the game of capitalism or business consciously. What does it mean? Well, I'm a human being, you're a human being. Every sentient being is longing for flourishing. And, I mean, I don't know, even the animals. So I don't know, for example, if you have some sort of business that involves working with animals, let's say you sell milk. Now, how do you treat the cows? Well, you'd say, well, just exploit them as much as possible. I don't think so. That would be unconscious. Can you help them flourish? Well, what do you mean? A cow? Who cares about it? Well, the cow is a sentient being for sure. So the behavior that understands, okay, but how do you make a cow flourish? Well, don't bother her milking her every day. It's okay, but if you can't milk the cow, then you don't have a business, and then you can't take care of the cows. So the way I think about that is, if I
Okay.
were a cow, how would I want to be treated? What would be my choice if I could think about all that? And I would like to, give some value in exchange of being fed. So I think that's the other part, is the permanent consideration. What are we doing? And the self-reflection and learning,
Okay.
and the seeking of opportunities to further the flourishing of all the communities that we touch. That would be the third.
Lovely. I have two questions online. I got more. I'm just going to use two questions and follow up on one of the ingredients of a conscious business. You mentioned stakeholders.
Mhm.
Not new, not invented here in terms of stakeholder integration. And the two questions have to do with, can you give a real life example, maybe of the dilemmas and the difference where in your environment where you worked in businesses, you were
Mhm.
able to actually, in your humble opinion, genuinely take care of all stakeholders? Because people sometimes wonder, is that really possible? Isn't that overstretching it? And the second related question, you can choose which way you want to go first, or deepen. What are good measures for conscious businesses related to not only stakeholders, but when do conscious businesses know I'm done? It's one thing to label the cow a relevant sentient being and you should help her flourish. How do we measure that? And there's other aspects around people and consumers. What is your thoughts on stakeholders and measuring the impact of a conscious business?
Okay. If let's put a lower bound. The lower bound, I mean, let me start by saying, I think we are in such an abominable state that shooting for the optimum, it's disingenuous, because we live in bondage. We live in a reality that's plagued with infringements of liberty and abuse and lack of regard and lack of benevolence, lack of kindness. So if we could only raise things to I would say to a minimal level, it would be a huge improvement. No, if when you look at wars and crime and all the abuses that humans we subject each other to, it could be a lot better just by avoiding bad things. Then we can go for health. It's like, I follow several doctors in longevity and all that, and they say, look, you can't even talk about vitamins if you're not exercising. I mean, if you're not exercising and you're not eating well and you're not sleeping well, don't even ask me about pills or super duper treatments. I mean, this bullshit, because there are orders of magnitude more important things than your super duper treatment. Basically, these three things, exercise, food, and sleep. So first, tune that up. And I would say the same. So what is a tune up? In every business, let me give you an example. There's a startup, and you want to take care of your employees. It's an important set of stakeholders, the employees.
Yeah.
So from taking care of the employees, you would like to improve their conditions. Pay them more, give them more exciting jobs, allow them creativity, allow them freedom, all that. But then there's the other side, one other side, which is the customers.
Yeah.
Well, who's willing to pay for the employees to do all that? Well, they have to produce. I don't know, let's take a menial job like being in a help desk. It's hard, every hour, I mean, you have to get angry customers asking you, oh, this doesn't work. Well, what would improve their life? Well, work less, for sure. Give them some time to go exercise in the middle of the day. Give them some time to study something different so they can prosper in life. Those would be wonderful things. Okay, but then who's on the phone? Because the people are calling, and the lines of the people that are calling to be helped are getting longer and longer and longer, because there's less people that are answering the phones. They say, no, we need to take care of the customers. So now bring the employees. Now you help the customers, but the employees hate it. Okay, now you have a contradiction. Then say, okay, get more employees, hire more people. Okay, very good. You can hire more people, take care of the customers, give free time to the employees. But then the investors are saying, why the hell am I investing? I mean, you're losing money. I mean, you promised a return. So I don't want to invest, or your startup dies, because when you present your business plan, the business plan is not competitive with other possible investments that the potential funders have. So they say, okay, well, am I getting a return of 5%? I can buy a bond. I don't need a risk. I can get a bond from the government and get 5%. This business is not viable. So you have to take care of the others. Now, could you pay 30% return? Yes. Okay, but then you have to exploit the employees. You don't give them any time, and you also increase the wait time. So the customers are upset. Oh, well, no, you don't want that. And when you put everything together, the minimal level, and this is why I emphasize the business, is your long-term economic value added, the profitability, the discounted cash flow. So the standard metrics, they will give you a lower bound of what you can do without coercing anybody to buy your product or to work for you or to invest in you. So that's what I mean by liberty. I'll change the word just to be consistent with what we said first. Nobody's forced to work for you. You would say, oh, but what if people are hungry? Well, they can go work somewhere else. Or what if they don't have any skills? Well, I don't know. I mean, but giving them liberty means a negative right. Liberty is you have the right for other people not to do things for you. You do not have any positive rights, because any positive right, like the right to a job or the right to healthcare, it's an infringement of someone else's negative right.
Yeah.
I have the right to not be forced, not to be coerced. So when you say, oh, no, but you can't fire me, it's like, what do you mean you can't fire? I mean, unless we have a contract. But if we have a at-will work and you stop being useful to me and to the company and to the other constituencies, I don't have to keep you. So, oh, no, but there's a law that says you have to keep me. And then you start abusing me. Or it would be the same if I could enslave you and say, I don't want to work for you. Oh, no, 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 but I have a permit from the government to enslave the people like you. So you either work for me or I'll make you work with a whip. So the profit of the company means that people are freely, or liberty, choosing to trade with you. The employees are choosing to work in exchange of the conditions that you give them. The customers are choosing to do business with you in exchange of your offer and how much you charge and the quality and the service you provide. The investors are choosing to invest their funds in exchange of an expected return, and so on. And I would say the community, like the people in a neighborhood where you pay, you behave like a good neighbor, and I don't know, you rent from the community or from the owners of the property. Your suppliers are choosing to sell you. So there's something about normal economics, a normal business, which is very valuable. And for me, that's a lower bound. I don't substitute one for the other. That's why it's important. Conscious business is first business. Like conscious soccer is first soccer. Conscious soccer is not, oh, you get freed from the rules of soccer because you're conscious, or you don't have to win. Now, but you can't do anything to win. The rules are more important than winning. That's being conscious. The moment, there's this famous phrase is, Smith and Wesson beats 4 aces. If you're playing poker, the moment you take out a gun, you're not playing poker anymore. Now it's a crime. You can't do that within the game. So I say yes, ethics and playing with the rules is minimal. And the rules are the rules of liberty, of not infringing on other people's freedoms. However, conscious capitalism or conscious business adds another layer of demand. Is I'm going to accept all the rules, but in addition, I'll play with a higher integrity. I want to demonstrate excellence. I want to give an example. I even care about my competitors. And I recognize and I appreciate my competitors for pushing me to be better. They're not my enemies. I don't want to beat the competition. I want to serve the customer better. But the objective of better is not antagonistic. This is not a war. The objective is I want to I want to help people flourish more than anyone else, including my competitors, because I'll instigate them to be even better because they want to beat me. And it's like good. I mean, it's like the respect of two martial artists bowing to each other before combat. It's like, okay, you're my enemy, but you're also my teacher, and you're the one that pushes me to be better, and I respect you. And yeah, maybe we have different niches, and I have more quality, and you have lower price, and we try to be better than the other.
Let me get to the next question, which is a summary of 3 questions which I received from Hendrik Jan, from David, and from Michael. And they all wonder in different ways if conscious business is a desirable state. I think we're all working here on the basis that to do business consciously is superior than doing business unconsciously. So,
absolutely.
And the typical question, I'm sure you've received it in many facets and variations, is there anything external setting rules, helping people in a certain way? There are certain principles, for example, ESG, which is a crutch, yeah? But maybe some people will argue it's a necessary crutch for some time. It may be that entrepreneurs that consume less, pollute less, should be helped because it is helpful. So are there other ways to actually help scale conscious businesses? And in a certain way, let me use that ugly word, favor. I'm kind of expecting, given everything I've seen so far, you're saying, no, I'm still trying to insist. Does it mean we leave it as it is and we hope for the best? Or is there anything we can do to, as imperfect and as temporary, as crutchy as it is, help the conscious side of business flourish?
Absolutely. So first, I hope I'll surprise you. I absolutely believe that there's lots of things that we ought to do. So 100%. With only one restriction. The only restriction is no violence. No infringement.
I'm sure you define it in a very broad, the broadest possible sense.
It's not broad. It's don't use a gun to force people. Like I would, for example, what can I do?
But
I would allow myself.
Specifically to what you suggest to do, right?
I would exactly what I suggest to do. Let's create the consumer cooperative of conscious people, conscious consumers. So we will boycott businesses that we consider are harmful to the flourishing of people. And we will patronize business that operate consciously. That's our free choice. And we can put a lot of pressure. And not only that, I mean, take it to the extreme. If you buy, for example, if you buy from a business that I consider unconscious, I will stop being your friend. I mean, imagine if you said, okay, what if there are racists, Ku Klux Klan people? First thing is, like, don't go to their meetings. Don't be a part of the Ku Klux Klan. Okay, that would be the first way to put pressure on them. The second way is ask people, what do you think of the Ku Klux Klan? If somebody says, oh yeah, I love them, I'm a member, extricate yourself from that relationship. It's like, sorry, you can't be my friend if you're in the Ku Klux Klan. Third, you can ask people, do you have any friends from the Ku Klux Klan? I don't know. Would you ask them? No, I don't really want to ask them. Well, then I don't want to be your friend either. I mean, you can take that very far.
So that's point number one. Consumers. Consumers have a power through their choices directly or indirectly. What
exactly.
Else? What else can we do?
You can compete against unconscious business and beat them. You can start business. You can invest in business. You can use all your property, all your power, all your energy to foster the kinds of business that you consider are promoting of flourishing, and oppose and not patronize the others. So all these, anything that involves free choice of multiple individuals in using their property. So boycott is perfectly acceptable. You can denounce, you can expose people, companies that are doing harmful things. You can publicize. Don't do it. You can tell people, I mean, you can do all sorts of things. But the interesting thing is, what can you not do? Or what do I believe would be unconscious?
Please.
What's the boundary? Because that's where we are going to have the interesting conversation. You cannot steal money from anybody else to patronize the business that you think is conscious. You
That
cannot do
speaks
it.
to the whole area of subsidizing,
Well,
favorable
I don't
taxation,
I don't want to
et
go
cetera,
there.
right?
Let's start clear, because if we jump there, it's easy to overlook the reason. The reason is an absolute belief in the right of every human being to live their life and learn their lessons as they see fit. So my boundaries, I'm not going to use force aggressively to make people do things that they don't want to do, or to not let them do things they want to do, as long as they are not affecting physically other people. So using the drugs. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
you want to
clear.
consume
That's
drugs?
clear. That's clear.
I don't want to be your friend. That's okay. I can tell you, don't get to my house. I don't invite you. I don't want to associate with you. But I'm not going to go with a gun and say, I put you in a cage for consuming a drug. Well, the same thing. I'm not going to lobby the government to put you in a cage. That is cowardice. If I'm not willing to do it myself, I'm not going to vote for anybody else to do it for me, just so I can say my hands are clean. So I'm not willing to steal from other people. I'm not going to vote for a government that promises to steal from the right people to redistribute income to the ones I want. I won't do it. That's what I don't. So when you look at ESG, I don't really know what it is, but I am a decentralized everything kind of guy. Any centralized systems, I abhor, because very quickly they get totalitarian and violent, because the natural state of human society is decentralized. People want to do what they want to do and create networks of affiliation and all that. But there's always this desire to have power over others, which creates centralized system. Money, I mean, fiat currency, that's abuse. It's stealing. Inflation is stealing. Now, what money? I don't know. It's not up to me. We don't need a committee to say, okay, should we have CBDCs? Should we use gold? Should we have cryptocurrencies? I mean, let 1,000 flowers bloom. People use whatever they want. If they want to use salt or cigarettes or seashells, I don't care. I mean, it's not for me to say what people do. So no, we need to promote CBDCs, because that way it will be better for the world economy. There's always a gun in the room, always, because people will not naturally go to CBDCs. So I have to force you.
What are
Oh,
CBCs?
central bank digital currencies.
Okay, thank you.
Or the pandemic treaty, which is being voted right now. Oh, it's for the health of humanity. Do you want your health managed by the World Health Organization? Because right now, there's going to be a vote in less than a month about giving extraordinary powers to supersede every country's constitution, so they can force you to vaccinate. And who knows, they already have the disease X that is coming. And it's all for the good of the people. The lockdowns for the good of the people? No, I don't do that.
Okay.
So the limit, I want to explain this very importantly, the limit of your freedom to act, or I would say, your moral behavior with respect to the flourishing of other people, is not to initiate the use of violence, either against them or their property.
Okay.
That's it. So
Understood. Understood. And I like that you're very explicit that this includes what many people don't perceive as violence, executed through monopoly of power state-wise, in any kind of or centralized functions which oblige. You take that to the extreme. I'm not judging. Of all that are forms of violence and are not sustainable for the flourishing of human beings.
you're saying that that is extreme. It's already a position. I don't think it's extreme. I
That is
think
very
it's
true.
a
But I'm
basic
not here
truth.
to, I'm not here to debate
No,
that from
no, no,
you.
no.
I'm trying to extract the essence of what you're saying.
I'm pointing out, not you, but I'm pointing out the mirage in which we live. Let me give you an example. I love kibbutzim. It was a failed experiment, but the collective farms in Israel, they were a total communist experiment. But why do I think it was a noble experiment? Because they were voluntary. If a group of people want to live together in a communist type economy, I think it's great. The family is a communist economy. So it's fine. Now, if they get tired, they can leave. There's no slavery. Now, the moment someone says, oh, no, the government should support the kibbutz because that is a very good experiment, now I part ways. Or when
Okay.
religious Jews,
Understood.
I'm using
Understood.
that. No, you can't force people to fund you
Yeah.
because you are doing something conscious. That's
So
not
let's do a
good.
switch and move to the individuals involved,
Yes.
conscious leaders.
Yes.
I know they're dear to your heart, and you work with a lot of leaders, some more, some less conscious. What is the distinction between a conscious leader and an idealistic definition versus a manager?
Well, let me say first, what is the difference between a leader and a manager? The manager wants people to do things. The leader wants people to want to do things. Okay, as a manager, I want my kids to study. As a leader, as a parent, let's say a parental leader, I want my kids to want to study. It's totally different problem.
Yeah.
Leadership is engaging the inner commitment, the desire, the inspiration. Management is about using organizational authority to give the right incentives, carrots and sticks. And I can tell my kids, you don't study, you don't get to play with the computer. You study, I'll give you the computer. I mean, that's a reasonable managerial structure for making the kids study. But that doesn't make them want to study. That doesn't create love for learning in them. How do you inspire your children to love learning? That's a very different question. That's the question of a leader. A conscious leader is a leader that will use that principle to inspire people to do things towards the flourishing of themselves, others, what I said before. So it's behaving in a way and adhering to values that promote flourishing as opposed to wilting, not take advantage of others, not exploit others, not reify, treat them like things, but to love them. Love is the principle, the desire for the other to flourish. I mean, that's how I define love. Love is not necessarily the romantic love. I'm talking about agape, the agape definition of love, which is the commitment, not just desire, but a commitment to interact with other people for the sake of their flourishing as well as mine.
Yeah, I understand.
So leader, that's what defines a leader, someone that says, yes, I'm committed to doing that. And I want to inspire people to behave like that and to work with me towards that. That's my definition.
You had two exposed roles in LinkedIn as well as in Google, which from far away, you've worked inside of them. They look pretty, let's say, open, people-oriented, conscious, I don't know, but very human-centered in a certain way because they rely on high talent that is very voluntary, engaging, and in a certain way, volunteers, so cannot be exploited because they volunteer to do so. And my interest is from the inside of those two examples. And I'm sure you have ample other examples because of your work in Excellent, where you
I work with many companies. Yes.
Exactly. What do you see working? What do you see failing? Because as we listen to you and people read about what leaders should do and what conscious leaders even beyond that, they would probably all agree, probably. Where do these companies, as a summary, fail, or what do they get right to actually move in this direction? It seems to be so utterly difficult. What are your experiences working with hundreds of leaders and in many companies?
Well, the difficulty is very basic, and I'll use the example of a diet because it starts with the failure of individuals. The company it's a system which is composed mostly for individuals. There are other aspects that are non-sentient, but the more interesting part of the system is the individuals as conscious beings. And the problem of life, I would say in general, is that what tastes good is not always good. And what is good doesn't always taste good. So you have to choose, are you going to eat for health or are you going to eat for pleasure? because health and pleasure are very different. So you ask me what gives me pleasure? I mean, chocolate ice cream, churros con dulce de leche. I mean, I haven't eaten a churro in 30, 40, I can't remember the last time I ate one, but I mentioned the words and my mouth waters. Just the memory of eating un churro con dulce de leche, I think people, the ones who know, and the ones who never tried one have missed one of the most sensuous experience in life. I mean, it's dangerous to eat those things because then you remember forever. I'll never forget this taste. Now, I don't like what they do to me in the long term, or I mean, having a little bit, it's okay, but it's not like a horrible, it's not a poison, but but I'm tempted all the time. Half of the time that I go to the gym, I don't feel like exercising. It's, I'm lazy. I mean, I'd rather do other things. I don't know, binge watching Netflix feels a lot more pleasurable moment to moment than to go for a run or to read a book or listen to an opera that requires attention and energy and study to really understand. I can just sit here and receive some nice show and then just watch the show one after the other, and it's the rush of dopamine and all that, and social media. I can give you 1,000 examples. What tastes good is not always good. If you disagree with me, I want to yell at you. I want to shut you down. That feels good. To be angry, to tell you don't know what you're talking about, and so on. And then you cowering, that feels really good. I win. It's like a combat between two lobsters. Who wins? What is good is, if you disagree with me, I want to understand you. But that's a refined taste. That's like eating broccoli. No child is born with a taste for broccoli. Every child is born with a taste for French fries. I mean, you eat a French fries, give a French fry or an ice cream to a baby, you'll see very quickly, the first time. There are some videos on Twitter or on the internet. They say the first time, the baby tried it, I said, oh my God, I just saw God. It's like this face, or animals too. I mean, they try something and it's incredible. But that is not necessarily something that will help you flourish.
So let me try
That's
and
the
summarize
problem.
that. Let me try to summarize that and come to the next question. So in a certain way, you're saying it's the human nature, if I take your diet example, broccoli versus ice cream, that being human means being full of a certain kind of afflictions which feel good, and we go to
Temptations. Yeah, orientations or temptations that feel.
temptations. So
Yes.
in a certain way, I hear here that it's a continuous work to address the temptation and being very clear in your mind what is good behavior versus what is the easy behavior. How,
Yes.
how do you, as a very experienced coach and consultant, how do you try and help people learn that?
Well, first is to recognize this. I mean, this comes from thousands of years ago. When you look at the Stoic philosophy, it's all about that. All the birth of religions is about that. It's we are like naturally developed to serve a purpose that is not ours. We've been hacked by our genes. We are conveyor belts which simply transport genes from one generation to the other. So if you look at this like Darwinian evolution purely, what the behaviors that are going to be privileged for survival and fitness to the environment are, you want to, get quickly to the age of procreation, procreate, give rise to the next generation of genes, and then die. I mean, we are not evolved to be happy. We're not evolved to be conscious. We're not evolved to be kind to one another. We're evolved. The genes don't give a damn. They don't. I mean, the gene, of course, genes don't care. I'm talking about the purely mechanistic understanding of genetics and nature
Hmm.
and Darwinian natural evolution.
Yeah.
So you could say, just like in the Matrix, we are robots. I mean, we are useful mechanisms for the genes. Now, how do you hack that system and get some freedom? Because let's say if you lust for another possible mate, in nature, there is no such thing as, oh, courting and what kind of life together. It's instinct. I mean, you're just gonna do whatever animals do, whatever they do. Some animals mate for life because that has proved evolutionary appropriate. Some other animals are completely, I don't even know how to call it, but they don't have a stable mating practices. They mate with anything they can, and they have offspring all over the place. And I'm sure they do it because they have impulses that instinctually take them to do that. Why? Because they've worked. They led them to survive. We humans are no different than that. We have instincts that have been effective to survive and procreate, but they're really bad for being happy. They're really bad for being mindful. They're really bad for a lot of things.
So let me go back to the question, say, realizing is the first thing, exactly what you said. The realizing it is the first thing that you need to do. Then comes what?
Well, then you need to have a commitment that you will not do that you want health, you don't want pleasure through your food. As long as you say, okay, well, yeah, I understand, but oh, it tastes so good. Yeah, it's true. And if you say, well, when I feel like it, I'll diet, you never feel like it. Motivation is irrelevant. It's commitment to a higher purpose. The higher purpose could be your health. The higher purpose could be, I don't know, your child is misbehaving and you just want to yell at your child because, it kind of works. You can intimidate your child and the child will obey. But then you think, is that what I want for my child, to be an obedient, scared little thing? No. Okay, so even though I have a temptation to yell at her to behave, I'm not going to do it. No, why? Well, I still want to. I mean, I'm human, so I feel the same anger or whatever. Something. Or with my dogs. I mean, I feel like punishing the dog. The dog just chased the cat. I'm like, no, I want to. It's like, okay, but is that the way I think the dog? Well, I need to. And then once I have this desire to help, to flourish myself and to help the sentient beings around me flourish, now I need to study because I don't know nutrition. I don't know what is best for everything. So now I need to study what's the appropriate way to treat entities of that nature. I don't talk to my dog like I talk to my children. Doesn't work. I don't even deal with my cats like I deal with my dogs. They have a different nature. A dog wags the tail. I didn't know this. I'm relatively a new owner. I mean, not new, but just a few years. But I never had cats. And my wife loves cats, so we got cats now. And what I learned is when a cat wags the tail, the cat is stressed. It's angry. It's not happy. But I would have said, oh, well, no, it's wagging the tail. And it's like, and then the cat gets upset. It's like, I said, no, the cat showed you it was upset. It was wagging the tail. What do you mean? The animals wag the tail when they're happy. No, dogs wag the tail when they're happy. Some animals wag the tail when they're stressed and are becoming aggressive. How do you know? Well, you have to study. You have to get interested and study what is nutritious for the nature and the flourishing of the other entities. So then you become curious. Like I want, let's say, humans to thrive.
Let me ask a follow-up question because I try to distill what I'm hearing here. And I say the first is become aware. Number two is commit, and you make an interesting difference between motivation is irrelevant, commitment is what matters. And the third one is learn. So let's double click on the learning. There's environments, and there's different ways how to learn, from books, from examples, from real life experience. What are the most powerful ways you have seen people really learn easy and the hard way what it takes to become a conscious leader?
Well, first, all the ways are useful. I don't want to minimize anyone because you learn in different modalities and different people are different. So I can't privilege one. But I'll speak about my experience and the people I know.
Please.
Nothing that I know beats a living example, an inspiring living example. And that's why leadership is so important, especially if this person is kind enough to share and train you. So having a mentor, someone that you can grow with, and someone that wants you to grow. So mentorship, coaching, and that's why I love what I do. I mean, not only I love doing that with other people and hope to be in the measure of my possibilities, an example, but I also love to help other people who want to be examples and like to coach. I mean, I just have a story that came to mind. It's a story about Gandhi. When he was in India, people consider him like a saint. So they would come to see him and ask for blessings. So this lady came to see Gandhi in some rural place. She came from very far with her son. And Gandhi said, well, how can I help you or what? And said, oh, tell my son to not eat any more sweets. The son was chubby and said, he's too fat. He needs to stop eating sweets. And Gandhi said, well, please come back next week. I was like, okay, I came from very far. I can't do it now. You have to come next week. I'll help you next week. Okay, so the lady left. And then she came back the week after and went, and Gandhi looked at the child and said, don't eat any more sweets. They're not good for you. And the lady was like, I mean, I came from very far. Why didn't you say that last week? And Gandhi said, last week I ate sweets.
Beautiful story.
The moral
How
authority.
about the example?
The moral authority is all about your life as an example. There's nothing more important than that. And leadership in companies is the same. Because if you live one way and you speak others, people will read it. People read it. Now, that doesn't mean you have to be perfect, but you have to be committed to improving along those lines. That's what people feel.
Let me follow up on this aspect, which is dear to many people that want to help companies, their own company or other companies, on that journey towards a conscious business. And you know much better than me, because you're much more experienced, on the huge amount of cultural change programs that create slogans, posters, 5 bullets that need to be followed, our behavior will. And if I listen well to you, and that resonates totally with me, it's all bullshit, because if the leader doesn't behave differently from a different level of consciousness, it's all totally lost effort. Actually, it's counterproductive. Would you agree to that? That the majority of
let's say
change programs are total useless?
No, I wouldn't say that. I would say they're a force multiplier.
Okay.
If the leader is congruent, the leadership of the company is congruent, and this is an explanation and an invitation to join a way of working that inspires people and helps them flourish, then the program, it's a good thing because it multiplies the benevolence and the intention of the leaders. If it is bullshit, as you said, there's an incongruence because it's a cheap way to try to improve the culture, but the leaders don't do it and they don't walk the talk. Then not only is useless, it's negative because it creates cynicism, it creates hypocrisy, it destroys the culture. So I would say one thing it's not irrelevant, but it's a double or nothing bet. If it's true, it's good. And if it's not true, it's really bad. But it's not going to be neutral. And people think, oh, well, no, I just gave it to HR. No, 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 no. I mean, one thing I've learned is I don't do programs for HR. I don't work for HR anymore. I mean, of course, HR coordinates and I work with HR people all the time, but it has to be a business program. It cannot be a culture program. Because if you distinguish culture from the business is always going to win. So it has to, it would be like, you know, if you buy a new computer system, you don't buy a computer system for its own sake. You buy a computer system because it's going to help your business. So if you do a culture program, culture is an enabler of the business. If you don't see culture as an enabler of the business and you commit to operate like that, it's going to create a lot of disruption. So yes, it's a force multiplier.
That brings me to the next question. So to summarize, the congruent behavior of the leader is key.
Absolutely.
And I remember I don't know if it was invented by him, phrased by Bob Anderson, who was a co-founder and CEO of the Leadership Circle, who said the consciousness level of the leader in an organization, the level of consciousness of the organization can never be higher than the level of consciousness of the leader. So evolving as a conscious being and being congruent is key. Let's double click here. what is your own practice to grow as a conscious leader? And isn't it, I'll let you answer that question first. What is your own practice to grow as a conscious leader?
My life is my practice. What is not? Everything. I mean, it's like a music always playing in the background. Is this okay? Am I aligned? What's the best way to respond? What's the most loving way to respond? How do I judge what happens? I read the news. You have plenty of opportunities to reflect. I mean, I do. I mean, there's wars going on, horrible things, beautiful things. I read about the economics and I think, okay, cryptocurrency versus CBDCs versus gold and what, but everything has a moral subtext for me. Everything has to do with flourishing and decentralization and freedom. So I can't find anything that is not, it's like, I don't know, dog training. It's also, I mean, what is the
Beautiful,
practice? Everything,
beautiful,
life.
beautiful, beautiful. That's almost a Buddhistic answer because people believe it's all happens in the monasteries, but most of the growth, spiritual growth, happens in life. Would you, however, given that you have a very conscious and conscious way how to look at life and take the learnings of like life in, if I just paraphrase whatever, would you agree that if not your way, which is actually a very powerful way, other ways are relevant, but you need to have a way how you nurture growth?
Yes, yes. A specific practice
Yeah.
where you aim at developing yourself and growing in wisdom and compassion is important. And I've used different ones at different times of my life. I don't know, meditation is an obvious one. Um, Sports could be one for people that develop the warrior discipline. Study. I mean, you can look at the yogas. You can do karma
Mm.
yoga and of action, doing good deeds, helping others. Wisdom yoga, jnana yoga. You can do bhakti yoga, adoration, the commitment to loving the divine or loving consciousness. I mean, they're all beautiful. So you're asking me, what's the yoga? Yoga, I'd say you need a yoga. You need a way to reconnect or to remember the absolute unity. I don't like so much the word reconnect because it looks like it's possible to be separate, but you need to um, consciously experience or meta-consciously, meaning be aware that you're aware, experience the unity of all there is. And that requires attention, that requires focus. So, I mean, just I give you an example. Right now, if I say, do you see me? You probably, I hope you say yes. I mean, my script,
Visually,
okay.
yes.
Yes, visually, right now, you see me.
Yes. That's
Do
the
you see
least.
this? Do you see the screen?
And now do, now that you pointed it
Yeah,
out.
exactly. But you see the screen was there all the time.
Yeah.
So what do you see? Do you see me or do you see the screen? Well, there is no two things. You have to
Exactly.
reconnect me with the screen. You can't reconnect me with the screen because there's no image of me without the screen. In fact, the image of me is the way the screen lights up. Okay, in Spanish, I say it in Spanish because it's poetic. Todo el mundo ve el reflejo en el espejo, pero muy pocos ven el espejo en el reflejo. And that
Nice.
is conscious practice. You don't need to reconnect. Everybody sees the reflection in the mirror, but very few people can see the mirror in the reflection. And that's what I just did is simply call your attention to the fact that the image that you see is the screen being lit. So there is, I mean, it's a metaphysical position, but there's an ocean of consciousness which is manifesting and everything there is, and it's all one. Now, you can be completely unconscious about all being one. It still is. I mean, you say, no, I don't see the
Oh, yeah,
screen,
I get it.
but
Yeah.
realizing it, I think that is the edge of human consciousness, which is meta consciousness. It's not just being conscious. Dogs
Mm.
are conscious, cows are conscious. I think bacteria are conscious, but nothing, as far as we know, is meta conscious. being conscious of being conscious. And that's what I think it's possible as a practice when you become conscious of the unity of it all and its beautiful expression.
Thanks. Let me quickly allude to some questions. I'm summarizing some of the questions that I'm getting, and they have to do with the, let's say, the way how companies work, and do conscious companies, conscious leaders, does it help? Does it allude to self in some organizational models? For example, holacracy, sociocracy, or teal companies, which are self-organized. And a quick answer is enough. We say some organizational forms, I mentioned some, lend themselves more easily to develop conscious business. Would that be fair?
Yes, yes. I think that those organizational forms are the forms in which people want to organize when they're conscious, when they're more conscious.
Okay.
Imposing, I don't know, imposing holacracy in a red organization is not going to grow people. That's putting the cart before the horse. So I think it's the growth and then the structure that it's aligned with that growth in consciousness what works. But it's not the form without the content. The form itself will not drive consciousness.
Let me use the last 5 minutes to talk about the most important topic, perhaps, for you. Because when I listened to one of your talks, you said the real battleground is not economics, it's ethics.
Yes.
Why is that? And in which way should we look at the ethics of what we do in business?
Look, I consider the greatest source of suffering today in the world the misunderstanding of ethics and the belief that there's a justification for violent intrusion in other people's lives. And I mean aggressive, not defensive. I'm not a pacifist. I think if someone is trying to harm you, you have the right to defend yourself. It's a choice. But let's say in metaphysics or in theology, there's a distinction between the cataphatic definition of the divine and the apophatic. Cataphatic is what the divine is. That is almost, well, that's one way to go about it. Apophatic is what the divine is not. And it's what in Sanskrit is called neti neti. It's not this, not that. So it would be if you're watching a movie and I say, tell me what the screen is by describing the objects in the movie. Well, you could never talk about the screen with the objects in the movie. The only thing you can say is it's not this, it's not that, it's not that. Nothing that shows up in the screen is the screen. The screen is that which is the condition of possibility. So neti neti is not this, not this. That's a phrase in Sanskrit about how you find the true nature is by cleaning up things. So I have an apophatic definition of ethics, which is my first approach, which is not what is ethical, but I want to define what is not, what is anti-ethical, which is much easier because I can say, this is manageable. I can understand that. And I've said it many times, I'm going to say it again, is to not use violence, either directly or indirectly by consenting to other people using it in my name against other people or their property. That's it, their freedom. Let people be free. So would I live in a kibbutz? No. Would I stop a kibbutz? No. I mean, these people are, would I government subsidize a kibbutz? No. Government subsidy or prohibition is violence. Letting people associate as they wish. Would I allow two men to form a family? It's not for me to allow. I mean, the question is, would you forcefully stop them? And no way, no way. Why would I? What do I have to say if two men want to live together in love? And if someone says, "Oh, but I don't like homosexuality," it's like you don't have to do it. You're like, okay, you don't have to do it. But you can't stop other people who feel called to that. That's their karma. They love it.
So the first and foremost principle is don't use violence.
Don't use violence. Everybody agrees with that. But be aware. Remember I said it's the principle, but then study. And there are so many indirect forms of using violence,
I understand.
especially when you put the state in the middle. That says, oh, well, I'm against violence, but I'm against drugs. I mean, that's the hard case. What do you do when people do things, or I'm against violence, but you can't allow people to do whatever they want. It's like, yes. I mean, you don't have to allow people to do whatever they want. People have the right to do whatever they want with some limitations, which are the same for all, to not initiate this. Now, there's a lot to talk about, but I would say as a first approach to ethics, if everybody agreed to that, if we all thought that, the world would be magically improved by orders of magnitude. Just that. It would be the end of slavery, the end of war, the end of theft. And of course, there would be thieves, but there would be no legitimation of theft. The problem is not that there are thieves. The problem is theft that is legitimized. So, for example,
in many hidden ways.
Well, you have to maintain. I mean, you can't have deflation. No, it's not even corruption. No, it's having a central bank that manages the economy and chooses, like a communist board, the rate of interest. Having special interests that make buy senators because it's the best deal to have a representative that will vote for you to have a special benefit, and use the law and use lawfare or the power of the police to give you an advantage over other competitors. So that's the hidden unseen uses of violence that are pervasive in our society is what I consider the next task of ethics.
Thanks. I care to close with that because you're an excellent company. Just 6-7 weeks ago, we had another person here as a dialogue. There was a professor of business ethics, and he studied the whole topic for 40 years, and his motto was, only genuine ethics work. I wouldn't say as simplistic that what boils it down to, but he was very clear, only genuine ethics. So ethics was the foundation, and it reminds me of the Dalai Lama, who is actually promoting, which has nothing to do with religion, secular ethics. Secular ethics, which in Buddhism have two aspects. One is the non-violence, which is very coincide, and the other one is be benevolent.
Yes.
Which connects to the purpose.
Exactly. That's a beautiful summary.
So on this, I'd like to thank you very much, Fred. We could have talked another 2 hours, at least me, but people have dinners, you have a life, and we need to move on. I appreciate it. We will have another talk with a person who, in a very different way, has shown a very ethical behavior towards business. Many of the people in the audience, maybe yourself, you may have heard about a ethical bank, which is Triodos. And we're happy to have the co-founder and CEO, ex-CEO for 30 years, Dutch folk, who try to apply this in the world of finance. Tricky, very tricky job, but we're happy to have him and listen to his learnings and experience. Again, thanks to all of you out there at the audience. Thanks for your questions. And Fred, have a great evening, and thanks again for being with us.
Okay, good evening. Thank you.
Bye-bye, everybody.